Hello, this is McD the Beast, and this is McD Sports 4 coming to you today with my Big Ten football predictions for the 2021 college football season. Before I continue, don't forget to hit the thumbs up. Please subscribe to the channel. Greatly appreciate if you do that. Really trying to grow the channel. We do have a subscriber goal of 500 subscribers, which I'd love to hit by the end of the year. So go ahead and hit that subscriber button. This year, the Big Ten. There's several storylines going into the Big Ten. The first one, who's going to be there with Ohio State? I think Ohio State's clearly the best team in the Big Ten by far. I honestly don't think there's a close second, at least in the Big Ten East. We'll see what I think about the Big Ten West, but who's going to be there with Ohio State? Who can the Big Ten West produce a team that's at least 10, 11 wins? I think that's a question line because I'm not sold if they can or not. Obviously, with Michigan, with the whole Jim Harbaugh saga, we'll call it. Is he going to get fired at the end of the year or not? I think that's an interesting storyline, and a bunch of other interesting storylines. Illinois has, I think, a very good hire in Brett Bielema. Um, can Minnesota bounce back from to 2019 form? Can Indiana stay as that top 15 team? Can Penn State bounce back? Lots of storylines in the Big Ten, but I'm just gonna go team by team here. Just give my quick thoughts on each team here. So East and the West here in the Big Ten. We'll kick off with the East. In first place, I have Ohio State going undefeated. I do not see a team, at least in the Big Ten, and the Big Ten East especially, that can either compete with Ohio State in that division. The games they might play, like for instance, I'm looking at the at Indiana game. Yeah, that game might be competitive. I'll agree if you tell me Ohio State goes in there and only wins by 10 points, I could buy into that. But in my opinion, no team in the Big Ten East can legitimately compete with Ohio State for that division. The non-conference is Oregon, Tulsa, and Akron at home. Tulsa and Akron will be wins, even though I don't think Tulsa is going to be necessarily a big pushover unlike Akron. The Oregon game. In my opinion, the Oregon game, to me, is a bigger game for Oregon than it is for Ohio State. I do think Ohio State wins this game by about 2 touchdowns. That's my gut feeling. I'm not sold on Oregon. I'll talk about Oregon more in my Pac-12 football prediction video. Hopefully I'll have that out in the next week or two. But Oregon, Ohio State should beat Oregon. You look at the conference schedule. They open up week 1 on the road against Minnesota on Thursday night. For some reason, a lot of people think that this could be a trip up for Ohio State. I disagree with that. Because I want to talk about Minnesota later, obviously. But I do think Ohio State goes in there. It might be a little bit competitive in the first half. I could see a scenario where maybe Minnesota ties up at 7-7 or even jumps out early 7-0. But this game's gonna be a blowout by the end, in my opinion. I think the line's only 14 points if I'm not mistaken. I would definitely go ahead and take Ohio State minus 14 there and then some. If you gave me Ohio State minus 20, I would take that, honestly. But interesting not conference opener there. They face all the teams in the Big East. The other two teams that get out of the Big Ten West is Nebraska and Purdue. Nebraska on the road. That game's gonna get hyped up some because just for some reason Nebraska always gets hyped up, even though they haven't proved anything under Scott Frost. But that's going to be a blowout win for Ohio State, and then the Purdue game is going to be a blowout win, especially at home. You look at the in conference schedule. At Rutgers, some people are high on Rutgers this year, thinking they could get to a bowl game. I think they regressed some this year. I'll talk about the reason why I think that more this year. But I think they regress more this year. I'm not saying I do think they'll win a few Big Ten games, but no Ohio State. I don't care that it's an East Pax-Garay. Ohio State should go in there and blow them out. Maryland, I am a Maryland Terps fan for y'all that don't know. The game is in the shoe. Ohio State will blow out Maryland. And then Penn State, not Penn State, at Indiana. As I said, I think that game is probably a 2 touchdown game, but with Ohio State winning. Penn State, I look at them. I do think they bounce back some. I'll talk about that more here in a second, but I do think that even with the game in the shoe, it won't surprise me if that game gets to 3 touchdowns. Uh, And then Michigan State, that will be a blowout, not high on them at all. And then the at Michigan game, I'm going to talk about this game more with when I talk about Michigan here in a second. But I do expect Ohio State to go in there and beat them as well. So I see 12-0 for Ohio State. I really don't. I'm just gonna be honest. I really don't see a loss on the schedule. Second place in the Big Ten East, Indiana. Now, I was originally not high on Indiana. I thought they got lucky to a degree because the Big Ten East was down with Penn State and Michigan being very below average teams. But they have a really good team coming back. They really do. They bring back 8 offensively, 9 defensively. Hopefully, Michael Penix will be back. Um, I think Indiana has the potential to get to 10 wins. Non-conference schedule: Idaho, Cincinnati, and at Western Kentucky. They'll win that Idaho and at Western Kentucky. They'll win those 2 games. I do think they beat Indiana at home. I mean, I do think they beat Cincinnati at home. And the reason why I do is because I think Cincinnati will. I think they're going to be looking at that Notre Dame game more than the Indiana game. Won't be surprised if you go out there and lose that game. But I'm gonna say for the purposes of my predictions, I'm gonna say you guys beat Cincinnati. You go ahead, you look at the conference schedule. The conference schedule you get out of the West is at Iowa, Minnesota, and at Purdue. I do think you'll go 2-1 in that stretch. I do think you'll lose in that week 1 game at Iowa. I just do. Not because you guys aren't a bad team. It's because in my opinion, Iowa and Indiana are basically the same. They're going to be, I think, 8, 9 wins most likely, possibly 10, if things go their way. With the game in Iowa, I think you guys lose that one. I think you guys lose to Ohio State, and the other game I think you lose is I think you guys go ahead. I think you lose either against Penn State or Michigan on the road. I think you lose one of those two. I think the game I do have you guys penciling to lose is the Penn State game. I think you go 1-1 against those 2 teams. I do think those 2 teams will bounce back, especially Penn State. I do think Michigan will bounce back some too. Actually, excuse me. Never mind. I misspoke there. I actually think you go in the road and beat Penn State and Michigan. I misread my notes there. The game I actually have you, the third Big Ten game, I actually have you guys losing is at Maryland. I think, and you can call me a homer all you want. Um, I look at that Maryland game. It's right after Ohio State. You guys will go. I know you guys will give Ohio State your best shot coming off that game against Ohio State. Could go into Maryland. It's a bit of a sleepy place to play. I can see you guys losing that game on the road. I really can. I know Indiana fans are probably going to hate when I say this, but the last few games, it really came down to execution. And to Indiana's credit, they were better at executing offensively. But I really don't think there's much of a difference between Maryland and Indiana. I mean, granted, I do think Indiana's better this year. I think it's the best team they ever had in a while, but I really don't think there's much of a difference. I really think Indiana is just better in situational football than Maryland. I really think that's what it comes down to. And I think Maryland gets you all this year, coming off against Ohio State. A game that I think you guys are gonna lose. I think Maryland gets you guys. So I do think you go on the road and beat Penn State and Michigan. But I think you lose at Iowa, at home against Ohio State, and at Maryland, and then you beat Michigan State at home and Rutgers. So 9-3, 6-3 in the conference. And third place, I have Penn State. In the Big Ten East, going 8-4, 5-4 in the conference. I really tried looking for that 9th win for Penn State. I really did. I just couldn't find it. Um, you look at the non-conference schedule: Ball State, Auburn, and Villanova. If it was basketball, I would be very nervous about the Villanova game if I was Penn State. But I think you guys go ahead and win that one. And Ball State, the Auburn game, it's a whiteout game. It's going to be an ABC night game. I do think you guys go ahead and win that game because it's in Penn State up there in Happy Valley. And then your non-conference schedule, you get both Wisconsin and Iowa out of the West on the road. I think you lose both of those games. I also think you lose the Ohio State game as well. And I think you lose that Indiana game. I do think you guys start out 0-3 in the Big Ten this year. but I think you guys have a strong second half. I think it's going to be a little bit similar to last year. You do bring back 9 offensive starters. Um, I mean, overall, I do think that with Sean Clifford coming back, he can't be any worse than what he was last year. He really can't. But I do think you guys struggle a little bit this year in the beginning of the season. You have some tough games at Wisconsin and at Iowa. You guys, I think, will be dogs in that game. In the Indiana game, I think Indiana goes in and beats you. I really do. So I mean, you start the season 3-3, but you finish strong. You go ahead and go 5-1 after your bye week. And you'll beat everybody besides that road game against Ohio State. You'll go ahead and beat Illinois. You'll go on the road and beat Maryland. You'll beat Michigan at home, and then you'll beat Rutgers at home and at Michigan State. And there is some talk about James Franklin this being his last year at Penn State because he might go take that USC job. My prediction is I think he's the Penn State coach in 2022. I think Penn State's, I mean, granted, they're kind of in a situation right now that I know that's kind of not fair because Michigan and Ohio State are in their same division. There's also talks about them going to the ACC, which I'm not going to buy at all. I think they stay in the Big Ten. But I do think that whole NIL thing, I think it helps the Big Ten the most, the Big Ten East especially, because you have talent besides all the really good talent is Ohio State. Ohio State's really the only team that could go out as a national brand right now, in my opinion, in the Big Ten and go ahead and recruit wherever they want to recruit in Texas and Florida, Georgia, Carolinas, California, out there and everywhere else. I think with the NIL, I think there's not going to be as much talent on Ohio State. I think it's going to spread some in the Big Ten, so you'll see more talent on Penn State, Michigan, Indiana, Maryland, Rutgers, Michigan State. There in the East, you'll see some talent go to to the Big Ten West teams as well. So I do think that the NIL helps teams like Penn State especially. So and it helps other teams as well in other conferences, obviously. But I just want to make note of that. I understand Penn State's. I understand the frustration because I'm in the same conference this year, and I even have to deal with you guys as well. But I do think the whole NIL thing. I do think it helps the Big Ten East at least. But anyways, 8-4, 5-4 in the conference. In fourth place, I have the Maryland Terps. I am a Maryland Terps fan. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say we go 7-5 this year. I know this conference schedule is kind of tough. I know the schedule in general is kind of tough. I can agree with that. I do think we go undefeated in the non-conference. West Virginia, Howard, and Kent State, all at home. I know we're going to be the underdogs in that West Virginia game. I do think we beat West Virginia at home. I just have a gut feeling we do. Howard and Kent State should be wins. Out of the West, we get at Illinois, Iowa, and at Minnesota. I do think we go 1-2 in those. We'll go on the road and beat Illinois there on that Friday night. We'll beat Iowa. We'll lose to Iowa, even though it's at home on a Friday night. Won't surprise me if we beat Iowa. I just don't think we will. And then we'll lose that game on the road against Minnesota. To me, that's a 50-50 game. I'm just going to give it to Minnesota since it's there in Minneapolis. And then the rest of the games, we lose to Ohio State on the road. We lose to them. I do think we beat Indiana at home. We lose to both Penn State and we lose to both Penn State at home. No, let me talk that back a little bit. We lose to Penn State at home. We go on the road and beat Michigan State. I'm not high on them at all. I think even with the game on the road, I think Maryland should go in there and beat them pretty comfortably. Uh, Another bold claim for me. I think we beat Michigan at home this year. Mike Locksley said during his press conference, basically, it's time that we start winning some games, and I agree. This is a big year for Locksley. I think he knows that. I think anything less than a bowl game is unacceptable at this point, and which I do have us making a bowl game, but I think he's going to pull off a big win or two this year, and I think he pulls off two against Indiana and Michigan. And then, in typical Maryland fashion, they'll go on the road and lose to Rutgers in the final game of the season just to make me angry. I mean, and we'll have a 2-game losing streak against Rutgers. But I think Maryland's going to be good this year. I mean, I think they're going to be, I think the best team Loxley's had. Last year, in year two, there was definitely some growth against with those wins against Minnesota and on the road against Penn State, especially that winning on the road against Penn State. That was incredible. And even the Minnesota game. I mean, I'm looking. I mean, they were 20. They were a 20-point dog in that Minnesota game. They were, I think, at least a 25-point dog in that Penn State games. So I was really impressed with those two games. I mean, the Rutgers game, we basically didn't have a quarterback. But even though I still think we're going to really lose to them in typical Maryland fashion because they always disappoint you a game or two. Maryland does. And then in the end of the game, as I said, it basically comes down to execution and heads up football and situational football. And I hope Maryland is better than that this year in Indiana. But overall, I think 7-5, 4-5 in the conference. I'll probably do another video going more in depth on Maryland since I'm a Maryland fan. But I am pretty excited about the Maryland Terps this season. And fifth place in the Big Ten East, I gotta go a little bit quicker here. Michigan 7-5, 4-5 in the conference. Michigan, I think, is gonna have a bit of an up and down year per se. Um, I do think they're going to be better than what they were last year. Last year they were god awful. I mean, they went on the road and beat Minnesota week one, and everybody was like, "Oh my God, Michigan might finally have a quarterback there in Joe Milton. He's gone. He's in Tennessee. Uh, it looks like Cade McRena is going to be your starting quarterback. He played some last year. He was okay. And but then the season went south pretty quickly after that Minnesota game with losses at home against a Michigan State team which a game that you should have won. At Indiana, that game wasn't even close. Wisconsin was god awful. That game was just a god awful game. At Rutgers, you barely survived there, and then the Penn State game which they didn't even get a win in. Which they didn't even have a win yet. I think Penn State they finally got a win there. And I know it was tough in the Big Ten last year because I do agree the Big Ten commissioner and I guess you would say the front office, the Big Ten front office screwed you over, but I mean, and your health department screwed you over as well. Michigan, they kind of got screwed over big time last year, the state of Michigan, with the whole COVID thing, in my opinion. But overall, I do think that Michigan bounces back. I just think it's going to be a bit underwhelming. They're going to be a bit up and down. You look at the non-conference schedule: Western Michigan, Washington, and Northern Illinois. I actually think you go undefeated in the non-conference, even though you might be an underdog in that Washington game. I think you can get the victory there. And then you look at the conference schedule. Out of the West, you get at Wisconsin, at Nebraska, and Northwestern at home. I'm going to say you go 2-1 in that. At Wisconsin, I think that's a loss. I actually think you lose that game by 2 possessions, honestly, or even more. At Nebraska, even if that's a close game, I think you find a way to win it. Uh, I do think you will win that game by 2 possessions, honestly. But even if that's not the case, I think you find a way to win that game. And then Northwestern at home, coming off a bye, I think you will get the victory there. And then your other conference games, Rutgers at home. I think you will beat Rutgers at home. At Michigan State, you guys have to beat Michigan State this year. I know it's on the road there. I think you guys beat them. I'm not high on them at all. Indiana at home, I think, is a loss. At Penn State, I think is a loss. At Maryland, I think is a loss. And then that Ohio State game. I do think this game is either going to go one of two directions. I think either Harbaugh comes up just short and he loses the game by a field goal or a touchdown, or Ohio State goes in there and blows them out 63-7 and Harbaugh's fired the next day. I don't think there's no in between. I don't think you're going to see, I don't know, 41-20, 49, even something like, I don't know, 52-17. I don't think you're going to see that. I think it's going to be an absolute massacre where Michigan doesn't even get like 2 touchdowns and Ohio State basically scores 60 plus, or it's going to be a very tight like 30 to 24 game, something like that. The game is in the big house. I expect you to be a double-digit dog going into that game, honestly. You're gonna be coming off a 3-game skid. I mean, the whole month of November is brutal for Michigan. I mean, you could go 0-4 in November. So we'll see which I actually think you guys will go 0-4 in November. I mean, I have you guys 7-1 going to the month of November and losing 4 straight. Hopefully that's not the case. I mean, if you can find a way to beat Ohio State, that would be huge. But overall, I just see another collapse for Michigan in November. 7-5, 4-5 in the conference. Sixth place, Rutgers. I'll admit, I do think they take a step back because I think they with the Big Ten East being kind of weak and the Big Ten being down in general, I think they kind of got lucky a little bit. I mean, they went on the road and beat Michigan State. I do think they beat Michigan State at home this year. They went on the road and beat Purdue. I don't believe they have Purdue on their schedule, and they went on the road to beat Maryland, and Maryland basically was playing their third string. As I said, I think the only team that as I said, the Big Ten I think screwed over themselves last year with the whole pro card crap and the whole we're gonna play, not gonna play. I do think the one team that did benefit from it was Rutgers. So overall, I do think that Rutgers. I think they're heading in the right direction there with Greg Schiano, obviously. Um, they're not gonna be. I do think they might be a bit better than what the record says, but I do think, unfortunately, I don't think they're a bowl team. I do think they find a way to go 2-7 in the Big Ten. As I said, Michigan State at home on October 9th. I do think they win that final game against my Maryland Terps on November 27th. That Saturday after Thanksgiving, but they lose the rest of their games in the Big Ten. And then they go 2-1 in the non-conference. They'll beat Temple and Delaware at home. I think they go on the road and lose to Syracuse. I did my ACC football predictions, so go check that out if you haven't read. I should have announced that at the beginning there. But they'll lose on the road at Michigan. They'll lose to Ohio State at home. They'll lose to Northwestern on the road. At Illinois, I know you're coming off a bye. I think you lose that game. Wisconsin at home, loss. At Indiana and at Penn State, loss. So I think it's a bit of a struggle this year for Rutgers, but I do think overall I think they're competitive in some of these games, especially like I'm looking at some of these games. They'll be competitive at Syracuse. They'll be competitive. I do think they'll be somewhat competitive at Michigan. I think they'll lose that game by maybe 2-3 touchdowns, but I do think they're somewhat competitive in that one. They'll be competitive at Northwestern. They'll definitely be competitive at Illinois. Wisconsin, I don't know if they're going to be competitive in that one. They won't be competitive against Ohio State, but at Indiana, I can see it being a little bit competitive. At Penn State, for some reason, it seems like you guys play Penn State tough for some reason. I don't know why, but I think that game has a chance to be competitive. But I do think you're competitive in some of these games if you're Rutgers, but I think you come up a bit short, 4-8, 2-7 in the conference. And then last place, Michigan State. I'm not high on them at all. I think they go 3-9, 1-8 in the conference. The one lone win in the Big Ten, I think, will be that home game against Nebraska to open up Big Ten play on September 25th. I do think they'll win that one, but I look at this non-conference schedule. Um, they'll beat Youngstown State and Western Kentucky both at home. At Miami, they will lose that game. And I don't think. I don't think they win another game in the Big Ten outside of that Nebraska game at Northwestern, opening up the season. Uh, actually, Nebraska is not your Big Ten opener. At Northwestern is your Big Ten opener on that Friday night to open up the season on September 3rd. I think you lose that game. I think you go ahead lose at Indiana. I think you lose at Rutgers. You'll lose the rest of your games. Michigan at Purdue, Maryland at Ohio State, and Penn State. I think you lose all of those. I know you guys went ahead and beat Northwestern last year at home. As I said, the COVID situation and everything. Some teams were at full strength one week, and then they were basically playing a third string another week. So I know you guys beat Michigan as well. I don't think that's going to happen this year, despite you guys coming off the bye. So I'm going to say 3-9, 1-8 in the conference. Mel Tucker, he's trying to just go through the transfer portal there. I don't think it's going to work out at the end because basically that means you're going to basically not be recruiting that well because you're more worried about the transfer portal. You got to recruit. Mel Tucker, I do think is a decent coach in college football, but at the same time, I don't think he should be using the transfer portal that much. So now the Big Ten West. I need to go through these a bit quicker. Wisconsin in first place. I do think they win the Big Ten West. I think they go 11-1. I look at the schedule, lines up perfectly for them. I think this team bounces back after a very I will say up and down season. COVID kind of got to them big time last year when they went 3-3. They did go ahead to a bowl game and beat Wake Forest in that. The only loss I have on our schedule, believe it or not, is the Minnesota game to end the year. I just have a gut feeling you guys will lose that game on the road. I just do. But every other game on the schedule, you get Iowa at home, which is a plus. That's going to kind of be the game to determine the Big Ten West, in my opinion. I mean, in my opinion, this team, you bring back Graham Mertz. He's basically your quarterback. I think Phil Chris is the most underrated coach in college football. Um, Overall, that I do think it's 11-1 for Wisconsin. That Notre Dame game in Chicago, I do think you guys win that game. I think you might even win by 2 possessions. Honestly, I'm not too high on Notre Dame right now, but overall, 11-1 in the conference for Wisconsin. I mean, 11-1 overall, 8-1 in the conference for Wisconsin. Second place, Iowa. 10-2, 8-1 in the conference. Iowa's gonna be pretty good this year. I'm sold on them. Unfortunately for them, I have them going 8-1 in the conference. So one loss being against Wisconsin, which is the tiebreaker. So I do have them losing on the road against Wisconsin. But I look at this conference schedule. At Northwestern, I think it's going to be a bit tricky. I think at Maryland, it's going to be a bit tricky. The second loss is going to be at Iowa State, the non-conference game. I do have you guys losing one in the non-conference. I think Matt Campbell finally gets his first win against Iowa there. But overall, once again, it was kind of it started off slow last year for Iowa, but they bounced back and won 6 in a row to finish up the season, including the Wisconsin game, which, let's be real, Wisconsin was basically playing their second string. Um, Overall, I do think this is going to be a great year for Iowa. I know the quarterback position is the question mark. That's why I can't put them in first place because I don't think everybody's sold on Spencer Peters or Spencer Petras. But overall, I do think that Wisconsin, wins the division in first place. Iowa comes in second place because I do think at the end Wisconsin wins that Iowa Wisconsin clash in Madison there at Camp Randall. And third place, I have Northwestern. Northwestern, I think, will take a step back this year. I do think they will, but never, in my opinion, Pat Fitzgerald, never count them out. They lose a lot of talent. They only bring back 8 starters, 4 on each side. But Pat Fitzgerald, I personally do think Pat Fitzgerald is a pretty good head coach. I mean, some people think he's the best head coach in the Big Ten. I disagree with that, but he is a very good head coach. They go 7-5, 4-5 in the conference. Um, they have Michigan State to open up the season, their Big Ten opener. I do think they'll win that game. They'll beat Indiana State. They'll go on the road and beat Duke. I know they have trouble against MAC teams. Ohio is a good MAC team, but I think they'll beat Ohio. And I think they start the season out 4-0 before going on the road against Nebraska again, which I do think they lose. They'll lose on the road against Michigan. They'll beat Rutgers. Minnesota and Iowa, they'll split those two. At Wisconsin will be a loss. Purdue at home in Wrigley Field, playing that game in Wrigley Field. I didn't know that, but they'll win that game. And then I actually think you lose that final game on the road against Illinois. I think Illinois is going to be better than what you think this year. I'll talk about them more in a second, but Northwestern, they don't bring back a lot, but Pat Fitzgerald, he knows what he's doing. 7-5, 4-5 in the conference. Fourth place, Minnesota. Minnesota, I think, is going to have an up and down year this year. I think there's going to be times where you're going to think they're pretty good, and I think there's going to be times you think they're going to be pretty bad. You look at Minnesota last year, 3-4. I mean, the defense was just pretty bad. I do think the defense will get a little bit better with 10 stars returning on defensively. They have 20 stars returning overall. This is probably the most experienced team PJ Fleck has had, but I still think it's just going to be up and down year. I really do. It would not surprise me if they could maybe get to 8-9 wins. It would not surprise me at all, but I honestly think 6-6, 4-5 in the conference. They have the non-conference schedule of Miami of Ohio at Colorado, and then Bowling Green at home. I think you lose that game on the road against Colorado. I think I have a gut. My gut tells me you guys do. I know a lot of people are running Colorado as a fluke last year. I think they may pull off a win or two this year, Colorado, that you might not expect. And I think this is one of them. You guys will beat Miami of Ohio and Bowling Green at home. Um, but then you look at the Big Ten Conference schedule. Open up against Ohio State at home on that Thursday night to open up the season. Some reason, some people think you guys are going to keep that game very competitive. I don't. I think that game it's going to be something like 55-20 at the end. Honestly, I do think the game's maybe a little bit competitive in the first half, but overall, I don't think that game's going to be that competitive at the end. I also do think the 2019 Minnesota team is better than this team as well. At Purdue, I also have you guys losing that one. Your four conference wins will be Nebraska, Maryland, Illinois, and Wisconsin. I do think you guys will beat Wisconsin, which will be undefeated at that point. As I said, I think this is an up and down season. I think at times you guys are going to look pretty good. At times, I think you guys are going to look pretty bad. I mean, that's why I kind of think of Minnesota. At Northwestern, I think it's a loss. At Iowa and at Indiana, I think are losses as well there in November. But I do think this team gets to a bowl game no matter what. 6-6, 4-5 in the conference. Fifth place, Nebraska. Um, this is a big year for Scott Frost. He has to get to a bowl game. I don't think they do though. I don't. I know they bring back 10 defensive starters. They bring back 7 offensively. Adrian Martinez, it seems like he's been there forever. He's coming back. Um, they have a big game week 0 on the road against Illinois. It's gonna be. I mean, that's gonna tell you everything you need to know about Nebraska that game. If they can't go on the road and beat Illinois, I mean, that's not gonna be good if you're in Nebraska. The non-conference schedule is Fordham, Buffalo, and at Oklahoma. I think they beat Fordham, FCS opponent. I think they find a way to beat Buffalo. That game is gonna be really competitive. I think they find a way to win that game at home, and then at Oklahoma. I know, and listen, I'm happy that game's back too this year as a non-conference game. It's gonna be a name of score game. I think, especially with Nebraska trying to cancel that game because they went in another home game. Would surprise you if this game's maybe something like 63-10. I mean, so I think you guys go 2-1 in the non-conference conference schedule. Your 3 Big Ten wins. I said Northwestern. I said Purdue. I went with that at Illinois game. I think you find a way to win that game. Won't surprise me if you lose that game. Yeah, I think to me that's a must win for Scott Frost. Last time I checked, you're on 9-point favor on the road. That's a must win for Scott Frost. If Scott Frost does not make a bowl game, which I am projecting here, I think he's fired at the end of the season as well. So, but overall, uh, they went 3-5 last year. They did beat Penn State, but Penn State was ailing at that point. Penn State fans are chalking it up as a fluke. I kind of agree with that, but uh, I do think that's basically. I do think Penn State's not a tier 1 team. I don't think they're a college football playoff contender this year. They did go on the road and beat Purdue. You get Purdue at home this year. I think you beat them, and then at Rutgers they did go win that game. Um, you don't get them this year. But overall, and they did have a tough schedule last year, their 8-game schedule. I mean, hell, they had Ohio State, Penn State, and Minnesota. Those teams were all ranked. Iowa, too. Northwestern people were high on to a degree. So that was a brutal schedule, and they still went 3-5 in that. So that was actually like not bad if you're with Scott Frost. But I just don't. I see 5-7, 3-6. That's basically what I see. I hope they make a bowl game, but I don't see that. Sixth place, Purdue, 5-7, 3-6. Also, Nebraska does have the tiebreaker in that. If I would have told you 2 years ago Jeff Brom would be fighting to get into a bowl game and there'll be talks about him in the hot seat, I think you would call me crazy. But that's the case. They bring back 9 on each side, 18 starters total. They started off this year last year pretty good. They really did, but then it kind of all fell apart. More likely or not, probably due to COVID stuff. You look at Jeff Brom, he's going into year 5. He has to win some this year. I do have them going. Unfortunately, I just don't have them making a bowl game. 5-7, 3-6 in the conference. The one non-conference loss will be that Notre Dame game on the road. I don't think you guys win that game at all. I think you guys have the potential of possibly even losing that game at 3-4 touchdowns. At UConn, that will be a win. Oregon State, very under the radar game. I think this is like a competitive game, but with the game being in Purdue, I think you guys go ahead and win that one. And then your conference schedule: Illinois and Minnesota. Sort of like last year, I think you kick off your conference schedule going 2-0. Sort of like last year, but then it kind of all falls apart coming off the bye week. At Iowa, loss. Wisconsin at home, loss. At Nebraska, loss. You will beat Michigan State at home, I do believe that. But at Ohio State, loss. Northwestern at Wrigley Field, technically a neutral site game, but I think that's a loss. And then Indiana, loss. So I think you guys start off strong, but then it kind of falls apart again. And then you gotta question yourself: should you let go of Jeff Brom? I don't know if he gets fired or not, but if he doesn't get fired, I think he's definitely on the hot seat in 2022. And then the last team, Illinois, 4-8, 2-7 in the conference. Here's the good news if you're Illinois. Brett Bielema was there. That guy, I think, will win at Illinois. I think he will. I don't know necessarily if uh if it's gonna be right away, which I don't think it is gonna be right away. I think it's gonna be at least this year, maybe next year he gets into a bowl game, but I think this year he does not. The bad news for Illinois is this team's not that good, despite being a veteran team and a lot of talent coming back. Um, Hopefully they recruit better with Brett Bielema. I think they will. Um, but Illinois, in my opinion, I look at this team. The non-conference schedule is UTSA at Virginia and then Charlotte at home. I have you guys going 2-1 in that non-conference schedule, with the loss being on the road against Virginia. Open up Big Ten play at home against Nebraska. As I said, 9-point dog in that game. I would think you would cover that. I think you'll be. I mean, you're +9. I do think you will cover that, but I think you'll come up short in that game. It's kind of where I'm getting, kind of where I think I'm going to go with when I pick the game here in a few weeks. But your two Big Ten wins, I think it's gonna. I think your two Big Ten wins is Rutgers on October 30th. I do think you beat Northwestern on November 27th. I think you get a. I think that'll be a big win for you guys going into the off season there, at least having a win against your in-state rival there. But overall, Illinois, they're actually a lot more of a veteran team than you think. Um, they did get 2 wins last year in the Big Ten, both on the road against Rutgers and Nebraska. I mean, maybe they could beat Nebraska at home. I do think that Nebraska game week 1. I do think if you guys win that, I actually do think you guys have a shot at a bowl game. I mean, they actually have a lot of winnable games on the schedule. Now, looking at Nebraska at home, UTSA at home, I do think that at Virginia game they have a puncher's shot in. Maryland at home, as much as it pains me to say this, that is a winnable game for Illinois, even though I do think you lose that game. Charlotte at home is a winnable game. At Purdue is a winnable game. Rutgers at home is a winnable game. I think at Minnesota is a winnable game. And then Northwestern at home is a winnable game. So that's basically what 9 out of 12 games I think are winnable games, or at least you'll have a shot in it. Personally, I'll say 8 because I do think the Virginia game isn't as much as a winnable game as the other 7. But I mean, you're telling me the best case scenario for this team is possibly 8-4. But I just don't see it. I do think it would not surprise me to get to a bowl game though, but I just don't see it. I think it's a bit of a struggle year 1 for Illinois, but after that, I do think they get better. But I do think you guys made a great hire, the right hire, and I think Illinois is heading in the right direction, but not this year. So those are my record predictions there for the Big Ten teams. The Big Ten championship is going to be Ohio State versus Wisconsin, in my opinion, and I do have Ohio State winning this game 31-16. I look at Ohio State. I just don't know if any team could really be within a possession of them. Maybe Wisconsin and Iowa can. I personally don't think Wisconsin will be at the end. If I had Iowa winning the Big Ten West, I will honestly think probably the same score prediction or a similar score prediction, maybe a little bit more on the low scoring side than 31-16. But I don't know if anybody in the Big Ten can really compete with Ohio State. And I hope that's not the case, but I think that's what it's going to be this year. But I think after Ohio State and maybe a Wisconsin, Iowa, I think it's very competitive in the Big Ten. As you can see, in my opinion, outside Michigan State, every team in the Big Ten can make a bowl game. I don't think Michigan State makes a bowl game this year. I'm just sorry about that. If you're a Michigan State fan watching this, I think this is a rough year for you. But I think every team in the Big Ten besides Michigan State can make a bowl game. And I think it's going to be a fun year in the Big Ten. I think some teams bounce back with Penn State and Michigan at least having a shot at either 9 wins if you're Penn State or 8 wins if you're Michigan. I do think the Big Ten West is a bit top heavy, but at the same time, I do think Northwestern. I do think all the teams not named Wisconsin, Iowa. I think that's going to be competitive, as you can see. But overall, these are my Big Ten football predictions. Comment down below. Tell me what you think about the Big Ten this year. I always like hearing from you all. I'm going to try to get the Big 12 out this weekend. Hopefully, I could do that. I need to get these out a bit quicker because we still have to do the Big 12, SEC, and Pac 12, and the Group of Fives and Independents. So I'm going to try to get these out much quickly. Maybe I'll do the Independents as well this weekend. But that's the Big Ten football prediction video. Thanks for watching the video. Hit the thumbs up. Please subscribe to the channel. Greatly appreciate if you do that. Really trying to grow the channel. Thanks for watching. McD the Beast signing off.